All right, Mayor, I have my devices rolling, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome. This is the City of Morro Bay City Council. It is Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. It's 5:30 p.m. and this meeting is being held via teleconference. And I will ask the clerk if she will establish a quorum, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Addis? Here. Councilmember Barton? Don't see Councilmember, there she is. Councilmember Barton? She is here. Councilmember Davis?
I am present.
Councilmember Heller?
Here.
And Mayor Heading.
Present, thank you. And we do have a quorum, so I'll call the meeting to order and ask in your own way if you'll just take a moment of silence to recognize those in need. Thank you. Thank you. We are back, and with that, if we can display our flag, I will ask Councilmember Heller if you would lead us in the pledge, sir, please.
All right. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Heller. Appreciate that. And with that, I'll ask our city attorney, Mr. Newmeyer, do we have a closed session report, sir?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. No closed session items to report tonight.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. And with that, we'll move to Mayor and council member reports. I'll go ahead and start this evening. I was fortunate enough to receive today a very nice thank you from the SLO Food Bank, and I would like to read the great card that they sent to us as a city council. It reads, Dear Mayor Heading and council members, we thank you for your dedication to eliminating hunger in our community through your proclamation recognizing our 15th annual Hunger Awareness Day. Together, our community raised enough funds to provide more than 1 million meals for those in need. I'm going to repeat that. 1 million meals for those in need. This will truly make a difference for our neighbors in Morro Bay. Thank you for your unwavering support, and it's signed by all of the staff members and volunteers of the San Luis Obispo Food Bank. And what a great program they have, and my thanks for their continued service to our community and county. And it's just amazing the outpouring of gifts and giving, such that we attained 1 million meals in terms of the overall donations that were received across the county this year. And so thank you all community members for your support of this great organization. The other item I had to report on this evening is that San Luis Obispo County, as you know, via the governor's action, we have moved away from the tiered system due to the COVID-19 virus. And as a result of that, basically the state has reopened as of June 15th. There are a number of mandates that do remain in place with regard to masks, However, those are related to specialty areas such as healthcare facilities, doctors' offices, and a number of other entities. And then businesses in each community obviously have the authority to either require or not require the wearing of masks, etc. What I did want to mention is that, unfortunately, San Luis Obispo County is falling a bit behind in its percent fully vaccinated and partially vaccinated individuals. It is, in my opinion, as a healthcare provider, extremely important that we reach herd immunity, not only in this county, but across the country. There are pockets of areas in the country that have very low rates in the 30 percentile range. Typically, herd immunity requires population either exposure and or vaccination rates between 60 and 70%. In San Luis Obispo County, we're barely at 50% with regard to fully vaccinated individuals. And so I just want to throw out a plea and a request for the health and safety of not only yourself as an individual, but also for your family, for other community members, that if you are not vaccinated at present, that you consider talking with a healthcare professional, talking with your pharmacist, talking with any members from the public health department that you may want to reach out to get further information if you have reservations about issues associated with these vaccines. Our public health department is an excellent resource for information on their safety, but overall also their effectiveness. These are highly effective vaccines that basically provide immunity close to between 90 and 95% effectiveness, depending upon the vaccine, but also the rate of hospitalization and the rate of death, if you should be vaccinated and contract COVID-19, is literally zero. And so I just would like to point out that we need to reach herd immunity. We're basically reopened. We've seen an influx of folks in our community and in our county. And again, for your own safety, for the safety of your family members, and for the safety of our community members, please consider getting vaccinated as soon as possible. There's plentiful supply available in almost all retail pharmacies that do immunizations, including 2 retail pharmacies that are in Morro Bay. And you also can contact the health department or go to their website, readyslow.org, to get information on where their pop-up clinics may be occurring, and they are changing on a weekly basis. And so, again, I implore you to consider that for the health and safety of our community and the well-being of your family. Thank you. And with that, I'll move to Councilmember Heller, sir. Do you have a report for us this evening?
I did not. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Addis, please.
I do have a couple of announcements. First, I want to thank State Senator Laird for visiting Morro Bay over the weekend. He was out at Pacific Wildlife Care and the Marine Mammal Center, and I want to thank those directors, Christine Johnson of Pacific Wildlife Care and Jeff Boehm of the Marine Mammal Center, who hosted the visit with Senator John Laird and invited me to see their facilities, to take a tour, and to talk about their future. And so that was a wonderful visit, and I very much appreciated Senator Laird visiting Morro Bay and getting to know our organizations better. My second announcement is that Council received a letter, and I encourage the public also to take interest in what is happening with the county clerk recorder in San Luis Obispo County. As of late, there have been a number of changes to 2 elections in San Luis Obispo County. One of the latest being that our county clerk recorder was attacked over numerous hours on a phone call. That's Tommy Gong, our former clerk recorder, that is. His integrity was questioned, as well as the integrity of San Luis Obispo County elections. He's a third-generation American. It was questioned whether he may be a Chinese communist and if there may have been issues with the San Luis Obispo County elections. And I remind all of us that San Luis Obispo County had one of the 4th highest turnouts in terms of folks who voted in the last elections. But since then, Tommy Gong has stepped down, and now it is in the hands of the county supervisors to appoint the next election official, who will be in charge of the 2022 elections, also in charge of the recall election that's happening, also in charge of the new voting system. And I'll remind the public, as well as my colleagues on council, that the county supervisors chose to go back to precinct voting, day of voting, and to get rid of the expansions in voting that happened during COVID, where each resident was sent, each registered voter was sent a mail-in ballot. So I am submitting a letter to the county supervisors to ask that they appoint an impartial clerk recorder, somebody who can carry out these next duties without erroneously attacking the validity of our election system, and somebody who can really step into Tommy Gong's shoes in a way that is impartial. Especially important because the next clerk recorder will be first appointed by the supervisors and then run for office themselves. So we need somebody who understands the importance of integrity with our elections and is not going to be party to false information about the integrity of our elections. So I want to urge my colleagues to join in sending a letter to our county supervisors so that we can maintain free, fair, and enfranchised elections here in San Luis Obispo County. And that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Addis. I'll just, I'll echo your comments. I also received the email, witnessed the same with regard to someone I consider to be a friend, Tommy Gong, and I will be writing a letter. Council not representing you. This would have to be an agendized item, and we are not having council meetings during July. We're dark in essence. So I'll be writing one individually as well. And thank you, Councilmember Addis, for bringing that up. I just wanted to echo the issues you raised and support your statement and indicate my support will be coming via a letter as well. Thank you. Councilmember Barton, any comments or concerns?
Yes. First of all, thank you, Don, for bringing that up. And then secondly, I listened to the League of Women Voters Future of Homelessness in Smoke County earlier today, and that was a wonderful presentation on what's happening, what needs to happen. It was great. So I just wanted to share that because I know that there is so much work going on here and Los Osos and all over the county. Everybody has a little piece of this, but there was some excellent news about larger planning efforts. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Councilmember Barton. Thanks for sharing that. That's much appreciated. And Councilmember Davis, sir, any report this evening?
Yes, I want to also thank Dawn on writing the letter as well. And I want to report that the Visit SoCal Advisory Committee met on June 3rd. Scott Collins and I attended, as well as elected officials and city managers from the other cities. Visit SoCal has laid out an agenda of activities that they plan to pursue this fiscal year. And the list came out of last year's Destination Management Strategy. And it's now been renamed, of course, Experience SoCal 2050. As all strategic plans must be renamed. They have some very worthwhile initiatives in the plan. They're going to work on a schedule of regional events and festivals, and included on that list, they want to create a county-wide signature event that will highlight SLO County as a destination. They're going to create a customer service training initiative. We're all aware of the difficulties employers are having in hiring replacements as they reopen. They will advertise the county trail system, something that has gone largely unrecognized as it has been developed into a first-class local hiking destination. They will perform a workforce housing study, which of course is the greatest need that we have in order to attract new businesses. They want to develop a nightlife strategy for visitors and residents. And they want specifically to look at the Morro Bay waterfront because the destination management strategy called out our waterfront as a specific tourist destination. So they want to work with us to help turn that into an asset for visitors and residents. And then the bottom line, they are looking for a 75% approval rating from residents for their efforts to improve the quality of life here in SLO County. So a very ambitious set of goals. I can see where every one of those is going to benefit the city of Morro Bay. And that's my announcement for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. Appreciate that very much. And with that, Mr. Collins, any announcements?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and council members and community members. Just a quick announcement. This is the last day for interim finance director, Kate Lichtig, and just wanted to call her out now. You know, council members will have an opportunity to present the budget later this evening, but just thank her for incredible service to our community. She's been here since the end of October and done a phenomenal job, and just really want to appreciate her efforts and bringing the whole team together in a really extraordinary budget year like no other, with so many changes and new funding sources, and trying to figure out how to prioritize and work with our Citizen Finance Advisory Committee and new staff, and helping with the transition ultimately to our new Assistant City Manager, Administrative Services Director, Sarah Johnson-Rios, who starts tomorrow. Thankfully, they've been able to coordinate ahead of time, and Katie's such a great team player that she's going to give us free time after she officially retires 2.0 tonight to help Sarah in her transition. And it just goes to show the character of Katie. And so just wanted to just share both that sad news, but also great news that we have Sarah, who's just going to be a great addition to our team, joining us from the city of Paso Robles as their current Assistant City Manager. So that was all I wanted to acknowledge. I know we're going to have an opportunity to thank Fire Chief Steve Knuckles later this evening for his service with the city. So I'll do that in a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. And Katie, I'm going to reserve my comments for your extensive budget presentation and recognize you then. But I certainly echo what Scott said, and we'll be telling you a little bit more about what we think about you shortly. So we appreciate you. With that, that brings us to our presentation. And this evening we do have kind of a bittersweet moment in a sense. It's a proclamation recognizing Chief Knuckles. And Steve, if you want to promote yourself, let us see that handsome face of yours, and let us just take a minute to recognize you. This chief is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay commending and honoring Fire Chief Stephen C. Knuckles on his retirement. And I'm going to read it to you, Steve. It says, whereas Fire Chief Stephen C. Knuckles began his public safety career in August 1st, 1982 with the Tascadero Fire Department. And whereas Chief Knuckles began his career with the City of Morro Bay as fire captain on May 1st, 1999, whereas Chief Knuckles progressed in his career with the City of Morro Bay and was appointed Fire Chief on March 24th, 2013, and whereas Chief Knuckles has been an active member of the San Luis Obispo County Fire Investigation Team and received San Luis Obispo County Fire Investigator of the Year in 2021, the San Luis Obispo County Training Officer Association, and received San Luis Obispo County Training Officer of the Year in 2010. And whereas Chief Knuckles has been the EOC Director since March 14th, 2020 to current date for the response to COVID-19 pandemic and created the Morro Bay Cares program. And whereas Chief Knuckles has volunteered and served in numerous positions for the Alicia Ruck Byrne Foundation for the past 31 years and served on the board of directors. And whereas Chief Knuckles has responded on many mutual aid strike teams as an engine company officer and strike team leader in San Luis Obispo County, as well as throughout the state of California and nation. And whereas Chief Knuckles has participated in and taken on leadership roles of numerous professional and community service activities, including the San Luis Obispo County Regional Dispatch Coordinator, President of the San Luis Obispo County Fire Chiefs Association, leader in the firefighter and school education program, and Citizens Emergency Response Team, and Rotary Club of Morro Bay member. And whereas Chief Knuckles was instrumental in completing the construction of the Morro Bay Fire Department that has been a lifelong dream of the fire department and the community as a whole. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Morro Bay honors and recognizes Chief Knuckles for his service to and leadership and management of the Morro Bay Fire Department over the last 22 years. And be it further resolved that the Morro Bay City Council extends its appreciation and thanks for Chief Knuckles' many years of professional service to the City of Morro Bay and offers its best wishes for many warm sunsets. Steve, I don't know what we're going to do without you, my friend. I just want to say personally, in addition to the words of the proclamation, that your service, your professionalism, your leadership in the county has been exemplary. You have taken on a number of important responsibilities and been a leader in a number of county initiatives. And I think one of the greatest leadership challenges that we faced this year was the pandemic, and your leadership of our EOC for the last year and almost a half has been amazing. Your professionalism, your ability to raise up quality firefighters in our community and paramedics is outstanding. And I must say, Morro Bay is a safer place as a result of you and your leadership and the team that you have built around you. And please know that you will be sadly missed by this council member. It's been a great honor and pleasure to work with you over the past 7 years. Don't be a stranger. You will be missed as a leader here. And I just want to wish you the best in your retirement. I know you're not going to retire. I know you'll find something else to do. I don't think you can sit down for 10 minutes and enjoy it. But I do want to wish you the best and just thank you for your service to the City of Morro Bay. And Mr. Collins, anything to add, sir? And many council members that would like to add a comment, that would be appropriate as well.
I'll defer to the council members and reserve a few minutes if I could.
Okay. Council members, anything to add? Yes, Councilmember Keller, I see your hand.
I raised my hand.
Yes, you did. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, you're an amazing guy. It's hard to overstate what you've meant to this community, and your leadership through the pandemic has been remarkable, not just for the city of Morro Bay, but for the whole entire county. And I think Mayor Heading probably listed 1/10 of all the whereases that we really should have behind your name, but you're just a great leader and a great guy, and you've made an indelible mark on the city of Morro Bay, and you will not be forgotten. Thank you so much for all you've done for us.
Thank you, Councilmember Hiller. Councilmember Addis, please.
Yes, I want to echo everything that's already been said, but also just called to memory the first time that I got to sit down with Chief Knuckles when I was running for office and got to learn about Morro Bay's safety plan, and how many of those things I thought, oh, that'll never happen. And then here we find ourselves 2 years later, finally being able to see above the pandemic and see our way out of that. And I think very much due to the chief's efforts, not just Morro Bay, but our whole county has benefited. I think of the vaccine clinics, the tryouts with the flu vaccine, the drive-through flu vaccine that happened, the Morro Bay support for the county clinics, and all of the leadership. And just want to say a very heartfelt thank you for each of those things.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. Councilmember Davis, sir, I see your hand.
Yes, sir. Steve, thank you so much. You have always been the tip of the spear for innovative planning. And as has been said, it is your leadership that has made our city a safer place. And I think you are going to be remembered as one of the heroic figures in the history of Morro Bay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Barton, please.
Steve, when I first came to Morro Bay, I attended a meeting at the fire department, and I was so amazed at what a beautiful building and how well appointed it was for such a small city. To have such a fine fire department was really something. And now, of course, I know that that was your efforts behind that, but I didn't know it then, and I just thought, wow, this is someplace. There must be some very good people who work here. So thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you, Councilmember Barton, well stated. And Mr. Collins, sir.
Yes, thank you. And I promised Chief Knuckles I wouldn't do a roast with Chief Cox, whose face is visible. Only nice words, and of course, even if we roast you, you'd all be nice things as well, because that's what you deserve, given your long tenure here with the city, Chief Knuckles. And the things that I'll never forget, one of the funny ones is the word cost neutral. Chief Knuckles has 100 ideas every day about how to improve things, and they all cost no money somehow. And he has spreadsheets to prove them. So, whenever a city manager asks, well, where's the proof? Well, Chief Knuckles always has the proof. And the other is just how you helped the city overcome insurmountable odds with the COVID-19 pandemic. We were not caught flat-footed like other organizations. We were prepared, and we're so thankful for the leadership role you took on to allow folks like myself to continue to function as a city manager, whereas other organizations, the city manager became ultimately your position and had to do both. And so you provided a lot of latitude for our city to succeed and pursue some of the other things other cities were playing catch up on. And just appreciate your long range planning, the fact that you care so much about community in which you don't live in, but you still show up for things like the Rotary, the Burn Foundation, and connecting our elementary school into the fire department to make kids feel safe and prepared for things like fire prevention and just thinking about the next generation. So, and the fact that we still have a reserve program that functions where most of the other communities have let theirs go, and because you see the value in preparing the next generation for leadership in the fire field. So I appreciate that, and just your thinking about outside of our community, the wildland fire situation that seems to get worse every year, and being a major player and thinking about how we can stay in front of this growing issue. It's not just a narrow viewpoint about Morro Bay only, but when you think about Morro Bay, you think about it very well, and I think you've taught your team to think both well with regard to Morro Bay, but think about the big picture too. So we'll greatly miss your leadership here at the city and your cost-neutral approach to managing the fire department. Thank you, Chief.
And Chief, I just wanted to thank your family, your loving wife and your son for allowing you to serve in a capacity that exceeds a full-time job. And so please give our best to your family and thank them for allowing you to be the servant that you are. I'll turn it over to you, Chief.
Well, there's a lot of kind words out there, and I've been blessed because I've been surrounded by great mentors, great leaders, great opportunity, training opportunities throughout my 38 years of being in the fire service. And Councilman Heller, you're right, I can't retire. I got to do something, so I will figure something out. And I've already got a few, I will remain in some type of on a part-time basis, incident management stuff to there's so much out there, and hard to believe it is fun also. So, but when I first became chief, I held a picture up of from 1933. We had a fire here in Morro Bay. We've been a fire district for 2 years. We just got our first fire truck repoed back to Paso Robles because we didn't make payments on it. So the community didn't have a fire truck, and there was a pretty big fire on Main Street, and it consumed about 4 buildings. And it showed residents fighting that fire, about 5 of them holding on to one hose connected to a fire hydrant, and they weren't making great progress, but it was a good picture. And but they were in their plain clothes. They didn't have firefighter gear yet. And the first thing as a fire department district we started was in 1931 was they purchased hose and a hose cart. That was the first thing they bought after they became a fire district. They tried to buy a fire engine. It didn't work out. They worked out of pickup trucks for a while, and then they bought their first brand new fire truck was a 1940 Federal that we still have out at Station 2 at the Benita Street Station. And I sure hope that fire engine sticks around for a long time, because this fire department is a community-based, community-wanted fire department. If you think about the council, you all, Mr. Mayor and council members, you have supported the fire service so much that we've had 2 sales initiatives to not only enhance but to support what we're doing. We had a sales initiative to get our equipment back, a sales tax initiative to get our equipment back up to date, and also to build a station that was destroyed by an earthquake in San Simeon. That's what I love about this community. This community embraces and helps plan for its fire protection, and it started back in 1931. And I love that picture. It's at the firehouse. Please come by. It's the only black and white picture we have up on the wall, and it's a great photo to show. Mr. Mayor and Council, I can't thank you for all your support, especially these last 463 days with the COVID situation. Who would have thought that this would have happened in our lifetime, and that what we had to do, especially at the beginning part of it, we didn't have a clue where this was going to go. It definitely could have turned out a lot worse. Hearing some of the stories that we heard from the East Coast when the pandemic started, where they're using city parks for cemeteries because they're running out of space. So we definitely prepared for the worst. The executive team that we have is phenomenal in our city. We're such a unique city with an active harbor front, with active tourism, with retail and businesses that we have. We're going to have the world's largest battery plant possibility storage unit in our city. It's going to be the first innovative way to store electricity and put out green electricity, so we don't have to use power from Nevada or New Mexico. We're going to have offshore wind. What a great opportunity. And I really have a lot of hope for the city 10, 20 years down the road, and I think it's going to be on the map. it's definitely catching up on the tourism, and definitely it's going to be the green capital of the West Coast. The partners that I have in the executive team with the Harbor Master Eric Indersby, Chief Jody Cox, Scott Graham, Dana Swanson, Katie. By the way, congratulations on your second retirement, and I hope our paths cross many more times. And then before that, Jennifer Calloway, Rob Lyvik, Joe Mueller, Greg Kellowek, brand new to our team, and congratulations again for joining our team, Greg. And then our adjuncts like Commander Amy Watkins that stepped up so much during the COVID, and then our Fire Marshal Matt Vieira, where we all had to do different jobs. And they always say that a team cannot be judged until there's an emergency and there's a unique event that occurs. And this team pulled together so fast during the COVID when we didn't really know what we were going to have. We had a draft plan that we quickly wrote up just a month prior, knowing that COVID may hit us in the West Coast. And our first meeting was a Sunday morning at 10 o'clock on the 15th of March. That's when we finally got together and we trained and we talked about how our first operational meeting was going to be that next day. That next day we had an operational plan that affected every city employee, volunteer, and because this emergency is not the typical emergency where it's a flood, tsunami, earthquake, it affected every single person in their town. And then Scott, with your leadership, allowed us to be extremely creative on, you never said no to any crazy idea. And World Bank Cares program is a great example where we use our CERT members to call every day at 11 o'clock, and then we use multitudes of city personnel and volunteers to go out and take care of our citizens. At one time, it was 182 households, delivering hearing aid batteries to them, library books, food, pharmacy goods. No other town did that in our community. We were the first ones to do it, and we're the first ones that really used our volunteer organizations, active in disasters, VOAD, in the whole county, and where the county never activated theirs really. And it tells a testament to your leadership, Scott, to allow us to run with this goofy plan and to make our citizens and employees safer. And a whole different issues, Scott. I wish I had my whole career working with you, not just the last 3 years. You are the most favorite city manager I ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot in the last many years, and I hope our friendship continues, and I guarantee you I'll be calling you every once in a while just to give you a hard time. Our county is very unique in the regional partners with emergency services through all the fire chiefs and also emergency directors of the EOCs that we have. We have a very unique partnerships with our auto aid, mutual aid. We help out each other so much, and we have to be one of the first counties to really call ourselves, there's no boundaries to our communities, that our auto and mutual aid agreements that we have, as each of our departments are struggling with the size and the manpower, because we are extremely expensive, and I totally get it, that we had to outreach to our regional partners to help fill in some gaps for each other. And I know, Chief Cox is shaking his head, yes, the PD is doing the same, and he could probably say the same, that the relationships that we have in our county is very unique compared to the other 57 counties in the state. I've been up and down the state on different emergencies, and I haven't found one that where every fire chief, police chief, emergency planner gets along and always says yes to helping each other out. And I've been to counties where fire chiefs and sheriffs and police chiefs say no, and it's not our job. And that's so fortunate within our community. I'm also blessed that I had two former past chiefs that are still sticking around. They're still part of the Friends of the Mobile Fire Department, and that's definitely Fire Chief Jeff Jones, who stole me from a Tascadero by telling me about the regional approach vision that he had that we're using today in our county, and then Chief Mike Pond. They have been both, they get along so great, and they've been great tools for me to use. And I wish this was a live meeting so they could be in person, and I can really thank them in person for what they've done for my career. But they have been really great, and to carry on tradition, the day when I leave the city, and after Mr. Collins picks my successor, that I'm going to join the Morro Bay Friends of the Morro Bay Fire Department, so that we're going to keep that as a tradition, that at least the former fire chief will stay on it to help guide the group of volunteers to help what we can with the emergency response we have in town. I can't talk any higher of the men and women of the Morro Bay Fire Department. I've seen some come and go, and I've seen some retire in our department. But we have a very extremely high performance team that really cares what they do in our residents' home and our community. They're the ones that come up with the great ideas and innovative ideas how to always say yes in someone's home when we're trying to help them. There's not very many forms of government that can go into people's homes at a moment's notice by just calling 911, and we go in there and we either were giving life-saving medication or turning off a water heater that is leaking. I think that's so great. Our local community is able to afford that, to allow a group of men and women to go in people's homes to make their maybe their worst day better. And we definitely have a great membership of all of our fire captains, fire engineers, firefighters, paramedics, our reserve components, and then definitely our administrative help that we have with Don. I can't think of a better pound for pound fire department in the county compared to what we have here in Morro Bay, because we are unique, especially with the active harbor front, the partnerships that we have with the harbor department, with the PWC program, with the surf rescue program, with the Coast Guard, talking with the off-going and the new-going Coast Guard chief just 2 weeks ago, that we have a unique relationship with the Coast Guard, and you won't find it anywhere else on the West Coast. And we're so blessed to able to break down those barriers. And then, as you said, Mr. Mayor, it's the family. There's no way I can pull this off without my family. I will show you. There we are. Hannah, Reagan, hi. They sacrifice so much. I think I'm working my 38th 4th of July, this next 4th of July. And they know they'd rather have me home at barbecue, or how many holidays I had to work, or I go out on an incident management team because I'm the last liaison left in California, and I'm gone for 21 days. Or I leave at 2 o'clock in the morning to go hop on a call in Morro Bay. Or sometimes I come home, I got to stay awake because I'm hearing what's going on in the county. Or some days where I just have to think about work and I can't think about them. Before I came fire chief, one of my great friends, former fire chief of Tascadero, Chief Stone, he told me that if I was to accept this job, it's like marrying the city, and I would have to pick the city many times over my family. And so the family does sacrifice when a chief has to do his job, because I have to pick the citizens and my employees sometimes first over them. So I couldn't do this without them, and not just the last 9 years or 8 years as your chief, but the additional 30 years that I put in as in the fire service, because I definitely went both feet in, and they allowed me to do that. I couldn't do it without them. So, Mr. Mayor and Council, it's been an extreme privilege. I am going to still be involved somewhere, somehow. You'll see me around. And I really care about the community of Morro Bay. Yes, I live in Tascadero. Yes, I coach at Tascadero football. Yes, I graduated from Tascadero High School. But Morro Bay is my beach community, and is my beach access to Tascadero. I know Scott Collins makes fun of me a lot about that, but Morro Bay has a very special heart. And it's the people that made it. Look what we've been through this last year and a half, and we pulled through a major pandemic with the lowest rate of death in our county, with all those visitors coming in, with an active harbor front, with a business and restaurant and bar industry that we try to keep open, and we kept a lot of them open through being creative and giving clear instructions and assisting and coaching them. What a great opportunity to work. And as I tell everyone that when I was trying to recruit different individuals I could to replace me, I told them that what a great opportunity to have a unique partnership with a city manager, with an executive team, with a community that supports and is super creative and helps their neighbors out. What a great job I had, and I really want to thank all of you for that. So that's all I have.
I have something to say.
Uh-oh, my wife has something to say. Uh-oh.
Yeah, hey, it was really nice to hear you guys say such kind words. But you've had them since 1999, and I'm going to take over now. Okay?
It's your turn, definitely.
My turn.
You're my true chief. I'm told I'm not the fire chief of the house.
Oh, no.
No, I'm very subordinate, and I have to listen. But I'm glad that we get to do some things now, and I can't wait to take time off. I haven't taken any time off since March of 2020. So I can't wait to get away a little bit. But I always will be around to help out the new chief any way I can. I learned from Jeff Jones how to do it, and just be there for the phone call. And Scott, I feel so loyal to you. You have been a phenomenal boss. Thank you.
Steve, consider you a friend. Thank you again for your service, and look forward to your moving to Morro Bay. There's a house next door to me for sale. You can get that beach condo now.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much, Steve. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to public comment. This is general public comment for items on the agenda for which you cannot stay, or items that you'd like to speak to generally regarding our city. The access information is on the screen. If you're joining us via Zoom, please use the raise hand feature in order to be recognized. Also, if you're calling in via the various phone numbers, please remember to press *9, which raises your hand and allows you to be recognized. Public comment is 3 minutes, and this is, again, general public comment for items on the agenda for which you cannot stay, that you'd like to speak to, or any other issues regarding the city. So, Anthony, do we have public comment, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. I see Betty Windholtz with her hand raised, please.
All right.
Okay, Betty, you should be unmuted.
Welcome, Betty.
Thank you. And my congratulations to Chief Knuckles as well. He was in the fire department when I was on council, and saw him move up through the ranks. I am speaking now because I was surprised to hear that we're not going to have a city council meeting in July. We usually have one in July. And my concern about that is with regard to SB 9, which is a bill that's making its way through the state legislature that impacts our city and our ability to plan and do zoning in our city. And it's a bill that has been opposed by the California League of Cities, and I was hoping that our city would join other cities and counties who oppose this bill, and that we would be sending a letter to our representatives in that capacity. And so I would encourage you, if we're not going to meet in July, then maybe you can take it on as a special item tonight with a supermajority and decide whether or not Morro Bay needs to also oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Appreciate that. Next public comment, Anthony.
Thank you, Mayor Heading. I do not see any raised hands left in the queue.
Okay, I'll go ahead and close public comment, bring it back to council. Just make a quick comment to Betty with regard to SB 9. The mayor has the authority to write letters consistent with the League of Cities position, and I will be doing that. Thanks for bringing that up as well. With that, that moves us to the consent agenda. This is item A1 through A9. I will go ahead and open up public comment for item A, our consent agenda this evening. So with that, Anthony, do we have any public comment on our consent agenda?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll go ahead and close public comment on the consent agenda, bring it back to council and ask if there are any items to pull and or a motion for approval. And I'll just start by pulling item A3 and A4. Any other items to pull? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of A1 and A2, A5, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Davis.
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Addis for approval of A1, A2, A5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Any further discussion?
I believe A7 was pulled by staff, so I think it would be inappropriate to approve that item.
Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Chris, for your eagle eye. I apologize. A7 has been withdrawn at the request of staff. I had that note, but I missed it. Thank you, Chris. So the approval would be for all of the remainder items except for A7, which has been pulled. And we'll do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Addis?
Yeah.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
The motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I pulled A3 just because I wanted to comment to our community. This item is approval of the implementation of various increases for staff. These are increases for all bargaining units and general staff that really occurred, community, because of your support of Measure E. And I just wanted to recognize our community and thank you for passing the sales tax initiative. One of the most important items was public safety and the maintenance of public safety. And this enables us to be much more competitive with other cities with regard to staff salaries and wages. And so I'm grateful to our community and just wanted to call that out with that item. And with that, I'll go ahead and move approval of item A3.
And I will second that.
Okay, motion by Mayor Heading, second by Councilmember Davis to approve item A3. Any further comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. I approved pulled item A4 because I received an email from Sean Green this afternoon commenting on this item, asking that we consider that if significant balances on these leaseholder rent issues remain after October 31st, that there be public disclosure and tracking of outstanding balances by property address, and indicating that that would provide maximum transparency to the community. I felt that that was a good idea and would like to see that item added, specifically that if balances do remain outstanding as of October 31st, that staff would bring back a report specifically on those items.
I will second that.
Okay, so Motion to approve A4 with that change by Mayor Heading, second by Councilmember Davis. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember Heller, please.
City Attorney Chris, is there any issues with regards to revealing that information that you know of?
I believe that if a Public Records Act request was made for who is current and who isn't on the lease payments, that would be disclosable. There are specifics about the business operations themselves, which privacy laws would restrict disclosure of. But in regards to that specific information, who's behind and who's actually paid their rent, that would be subject to a Public Records Act request, I believe, and therefore, I believe that at council's discretion, it could be provided at a council meeting.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks, Councilmember Heller, for pointing that out. Appreciate it. Any further comments? If not, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you for that. That brings us to item B, which is our public hearings for the evening. The first public hearing is item B1. This, because it is a public hearing, just for council's edification, we will go ahead and receive the staff report and then allow any council questions at that time. After council questions, I will go ahead and open up the public hearing, invite the appellant to come forward, and then the applicant. And after completion of their presentation, I will open up general public comment, receive that, and then close the public hearing, and then go ahead with council discussion and recommendation for action. So that's the process, and with that, this is item B-1 for this evening. It's the appeal of Planning Commission approval on May 18th, 2021 of the conditional use permit for a proposed 560 square foot addition to an existing non-conforming 1,683 square foot single-family residence. The existing residence is non-conforming in regard to the front and south side setbacks. The project is zone R1 and is not within the Coastal Commission appeal jurisdiction. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I believe, Mr. Graham looks ready.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Heading. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to share with everybody. Okay, as was stated this evening, we have before you an appeal of conditional use permit CUP 2103. It was for the addition and remodel of an existing single-story home. It would add a second story to the residence located at 429 Tulare. The appellant is Wayne Johnson, and the applicants are Pete and Beth Reagan, and I think project representative and the architect is Brian Woodley. A little bit of information on the project. The existing home is 1,683 square feet in size, and also has a 452 square foot garage. The proposed remodel and addition added 111 square feet to the lower floor, and a 449 square feet to the second story. Inside that addition, it includes a study, a bathroom, and a deck. As was noted, the Planning Commission rendered their approval of the project on May 18th, and the project was appealed by Mr. Johnson on May 27th of 2021. The project, here's some of the development standards that go along with it. The existing the setback requirements for the project on the front are 20 feet. It's non-conforming related to that. Its existing setback is 4.5 feet. It also has a side or interior yard setback nonconformity requirement is 5, and the proposed on the south side of the residence, or left-hand side if you're facing it, is at 4 feet. And then the remainder of the project is compliant with the development standards. I would note specifically here that the height in this area is allowed to be at 25 feet, and the proposal is it's 22 feet 6 inches, so not pushing the envelope related to the maximum height. Those two items where it's non-conforming makes the project non-conforming, and as such, when you're proposing expansions of non-conforming structures over 25% of the existing square footage, they require approval by the Planning Commission of a coastal conditional use permit, which is why this was in front of the Planning Commission in the first place. Here are some pictures of the site. The upper left-hand is the existing single-story home. You see that garage that's located closer to the street, so it's in that 4.5-foot range. And then the back of that garage is the portion of the non-conforming setback, which has that rear wall of that garage situated at 4 feet. Again, all setbacks and development standards related to the proposed expansion conform to the city's development standards. And then you see the proposed exhibit below, and it shows that the rendering. You can see that the development, the additions, two-story additions at the back of the home. Here's a site plan of it, so you can see the existing area, the home sort of in that blue-green color, and the area that's sort of that yellow color where the additions proposed, and it is within all setbacks, as noted previously. Here is a sort of three-dimensional rendering of it, of the addition. I'm looking at from the front view and the rear view. The side view gives you a little bit better idea of what it looks like, because it shows you that slanted roof. When you're looking at it head on or from the back side of it, it kind of doesn't give you a very good perspective. This does a better job of that. So we did receive the appeal. The first reason for the appeal, as noted by the appellant, was that the addition/remodel is too massive. So the project design, size, mass are compliant with city standards, which is sort of the minimum requirements that you have to meet. So it does meet height requirements, building area, lot coverage, all of those types of things. And again, it went from 1,683 square feet to a proposed living area of 2,243 square feet. And we did a quick look around at the surrounding properties in the immediate vicinity, and you see at 430 Tulare, they have 2,246 square foot. 409 is 2132, 438 is 2268, and 437 Tulare is at 1,846. So all, in that same ballpark as this. So what you see is a house in addition that is consistent with those in the neighborhood around it. The second claim of the appeal was that the addition is not in conformance with other homes in the neighborhood. Sort of reiterate that it's sort of consistent with the design of the neighborhood, the size of the homes in the neighborhood. It's proposed at 2 stories. The majority of the homes in the immediate vicinity of this house are proposed at, exist at 2 stories. The addition proposes consistent materials with the existing home, so there really is nothing that is out of the ordinary as is proposed with this project. Another slide that sort of shows some of the other 2-story homes. So you have the subject home in the center there, and you see these other homes that are highlighted around it, especially in the dark outlines. Those are all 2-story homes. So this is the sort of anomaly in this little area here that it's only a single-story home. So the requested relief by the appellant is that the project be denied or sent back. It doesn't say sent back to whom. We presume that's to the Planning Commission because they're the body that approved the project. It would be sent back to them for modification if that were the decision by the City Council. Given that the project, underwent a thorough review by your Planning Commission, they reviewed the project design, they reviewed the concern related to neighborhood consistency, height, bulk, and scale, and found that none of those issues were present with regard to the project. Staff does recommend the Council deny the appeal and uphold Planning Commission's approval of Conditional Use Permit 2103 by adopting Resolution 40-21. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, and I'll stop sharing my screen now.
Hey, thank you, Scott. Very much appreciate the excellent presentation and overview, especially the visuals. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any council questions, and I'll look for raised hand or So are there any council questions of staff regarding the presentation? Seeing, oh, yes. Is that Councilmember Martin?
Sorry, no.
It's Councilmember Addis, but I have
Okay.
too.
Councilmember Addis, I'm sorry, I didn't see a hand, but go ahead, please.
I was saying none from me.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you. No worries. Yes, Councilmember Martin, I see your hand.
Okay, I wanted to thank Scott for especially the visuals. I walked down to look at this house today, and just looking at it, I was guessing that the addition was going to be in the front, and so so it wasn't until I got home and was looking through my packet that I found the pictures, and I think it's a good design, and all the other houses all around it, just like your pictures show, it's all 2 stories. So to me, it seems like it makes sense.
Thank you, Councilmember Martin. I'm looking for other hands for questions for staff. Okay, see no hands. I have no questions. Again, thank you, Scott, for your presentation. I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. I'm going to ask the city clerk if we could promote Mr. Wayne Johnson, who is the appellant. And once he gets in, I'll give him some instructions. Is Mr. Johnson with us this evening?
I see Wayne's iPad, yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm trying to move Wayne's iPad over.
Okay.
Yeah.
We might have done it at the same time, Anthony.
Simultaneous.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yeah, I still see him over here. Let's see. Promote the panelists.
There he is.
Did he show up there yet? I'm still seeing him on. I'm trying to promote him to panelist right now. Okay, that took a second. He should be over on the panelist side.
I see it. Mr. Johnson, if you'll unmute yourself, and if you have a camera and you'd like to turn it on, that'd be great.
Yeah, I choose not to, if that's all right.
Okay, that's not a problem. That's your prerogative. Welcome, Mr. Johnson. You do have 10 minutes. If you need to take it all, they're yours. If not, less it would be fine, but it's your preference, sir. We'll allow you to go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Your Hetty and council members, I appreciate your time. I'm not alone on the feelings of the design of this project. I have no objections to the Regans adding on to their home. But what we see is something that is just incredibly, it feels like it's being thrown forward into our face. It's coming back at us. With the way that roof comes back toward the mountain, it just feels dominating, and it doesn't feel like it conforms to anything in the neighborhood that we have. I just think, it's not appropriate for this neighborhood. It looks very massive, as Scott pointed out, and I objected to it. And my neighbors aren't alone on this feeling. It's not just me, but it's just a very obtrusive design. I don't think it's ugly, but it just gives the feeling of something coming, like, I don't know, Jaws or something coming out at you. It's just very in-your-face type of project, and I think that needs to be modified. I don't know if that's for the planning commission, or thought it would be for the architect and the owners, but I don't think it's appropriate. And my neighbors were not appreciating it. I don't have a whole lot else to say. That's really it. In a nutshell, is that just going forward conforms to what we have. And building materials, sure. Yeah, everybody uses similar building materials, but it's the design, this thing coming back, to all of us behind it, it just doesn't look good to us. So I want the readers to know that, and everyone else to be aware of that.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, thank you. If you'll stay with us in case the council has any questions, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the applicant if the applicant is present, and then we may have some questions for you. So thank you for that. With that, if we can, do we have either Pete or Beth Reagan available? Are they willing or wanting to comment?
I do not see any names similar to that mentioned.
I did see Brian Ridley, who is the architect on the project, in the queue.
Okay.
Sir, he wants to speak.
Okay, I will go ahead and unmute him.
And who is this, Scott?
He is the representative for the project and the project architect.
And his name again, please?
Is Brian Ridley.
Great, thanks. Brian, are you with us?
Okay, Brian, I have unmuted you.
I am here.
Brian, welcome. You do have 10 minutes if you need it, and appreciate you being here, speaking on behalf of the applicant, and go ahead, sir.
Sure thing. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Brian Ridley. I'm the principal architect of the Brackett Architecture Office, and I'm representing the owners, Beth and Pete Regan at 429 Tulare. So I want to thank Mr. Scott Graham for his staff report tonight, outlining staff support for the project as designed, and also for the Planning Commission's review and unanimous approval some weeks ago. When we set out to design this addition, we did want to maintain the modest expression and consistency with the neighborhood. So we certainly looked around and took a look at the homes that were nearby. So to do so, the proposed addition at 429 Tulare was designed to remain small at approximately 30% of the ground floor structure's residential area in total. And the second story accounts for about 80% of the addition at 449 square feet. And then the balance of the addition is really the footprint of the staircase to access the addition and a small closet expansion on the back of the house. So as such, the upper story is smaller than all but one of the second stories among the nearest 7 adjacent properties that have the second story. So the exhibit that was included in Mr. Graham's presentation, 7 of the 8 homes that are sort of the nearest, either adjacent or across the street, 7 of them already have second stories, and that's sort of the context for the project. And while it's understood, of course, that views are of unique value to the residents of Morro Bay, the addition was designed with that in mind, along with responsiveness to planning guidelines for additions to be set back from the front of the existing structure and the street. And so by setting that back, that opens up sight lines in between this property and the other second stories nearby, both of which are closer to the street. So you get sort of opens up more of a diagonal view at that point, rather than having all 3 upper stories more in alignment. There was a comment from the appellant regarding the roof line, and they just wanted to comment in case there was any confusion. The roof line is designed to be lowest on the street side, which puts the highest portion of the roof furthest from anybody kind of viewing from uphill. And so I just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Certainly sometimes architectural drawings are very flat, the elevations, if you will, and I think they can often represent things in a way that is less flattering or even less real, and so that's why we included the photo simulation in our package to show the addition in the context of an actual photograph where you can really perceive the receding of the addition from the street. And so ultimately, this project is requesting that the second story views afforded to the neighboring properties be available to this one as well, in accordance to the standards provided by the zoning regulations. We're not seeking any variances with the project, and it's designed to meet all the height and lot coverage metrics, and again, it's only about 30% of the total floor area of the floor below. So we all appreciate your consideration, and we ask that you deny the appeal. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ridley. Appreciate you being here this evening, and thanks for remaining in case there are any council questions. So let me go back to council and just ask, does anybody have a question for either the appellant, Mr. Johnson, or the representative for the applicant, Mr. Ridley? And if so, if you raise your hand, I'll recognize you. Okay, see, Councilmember Heller, yes, please.
Yes, I have a question for the appellant.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, if you're still there, I'm wondering if you're concerned about the mass of the addition. Does the addition in any way block your views or create shade on your property that you are concerned about, or is it really just the mass of the addition?
Am I on here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. As far as blocking our views, I can't tell from the drawings how much of our view it will block. I mean, nobody likes to have their view blocked, but we understand that homes are going to be built down below us, and that's just what happens. But the biggest feature is how this is designed, where everything's just kind of in our face. We're not liking it. It's the roof line is highest in the front. From what I can tell from this drawing, it's highest up in the front. It slopes down with the hill toward the ocean. And it just feels threatening. It just feels in your face. You can't say that enough. Does not conform with anything in the region. Not one single house. This type of design just doesn't conform with I think it needs to be modified.
Okay, well, Mr. Ridley, maybe you can, it seems to me that it slopes the other way. I'm looking at it wrong.
Councilmember Heller, I believe you're correct. So the lowest portion of the roof is closest to Tulare Avenue. And so it slopes away from the street, slopes up and away from the street, as does the house to the north. So effectively, the shortest part of the second story is what's closest to the street.
Is it possible to see another drawing of that in front?
Who's speaking, please?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so when the council member is asking questions, we can't have you respond to those things, so
I'm sorry.
That's okay, thanks. Go ahead, Ms. Ridley, go ahead, you were finishing.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe I was done. I think within Mr. Graham's presentation, I believe he did have the three-dimensional representation where the addition is set into the existing photograph. And so if that's something that can be shared again, that might just provide everybody with the same context.
Sure. Scott, you want to go ahead and put that up real quick?
Yep, I can do that.
Thank you.
So I'll get to the slide here. So here's the one context. Can you see it?
Yes.
So you can see the context on the right. You see the roof sloping back towards the street. This is taken from the perspective of the street, and you see in the background the rock, right? And you see the roof sloping back towards the street. So what Mr. Ridley was saying is correct, and I think the appellant just was a little confused about which way the roof was sloping is all.
Got you. Thank you.
So anything else you want to see before I stop sharing?
Those are my questions. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you. If they're looking for other council member questions. Okay, seeing no further questions, Mr. Johnson, this is outside of protocol, but I see your hand up. Is there something you'd like to say?
Yes. What I saw at the planning commission was not the same drawing. That drawing makes the place appear small. And by any means small, I know it's only 400 square feet. It's on the second story, but it rises up massively above that floor level. And then I showed other drawings, and now I feel like it's Scott's trying to play this down, but it's not really that big, it's not massive, let's just pass this. And I don't think that's right. We had other drawings at the planning commission that showed how big this really is. And I don't think that's an appropriate drawing that we're showing right now.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. With that, I'm seeing no further council questions. I'm going to go ahead and open up general public comment. This is public comment for item B-1. Any member of the public wishing to speak on this item, public comment is now open. And Anthony, do we have anybody in the queue?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay, thank you for that. I will go ahead and close public comment. I'm going to close the public hearing, bring it back to council for further discussion or a motion. Looking for any hand. Oh, Councilmember Hiller, thank you.
Yeah.
Moved on me. You went from right to left over there.
Did I? Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to thank Mr. Johnson for participating tonight and expressing his concerns, and Mr. Ridley for joining as well. Personally, as the liaison to the group of folks who are on our planning commission, I have enormous confidence in the care that they take to review these applications, or these appeals, I should say, and our community development department does the same. In spite of Mr. Johnson's concerns, I don't see any reason to support this appeal. I know it's difficult when things get built around you. I went through this process myself about 5 years ago, and it was painful, but from what I can tell, everything that's been looked at by the Community Development Department and approved by the Planning Commission is fully compliant with our ordinances, and so I'm thinking that I can't support the appeal.
Hey, would you like to make a motion, sir?
And I will make a motion to deny the appeal for this agenda item.
Okay, I'll second. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Councilmember Addis, we've got a second. That's fine. I believe council member is moving the staff recommendation, which is to adopt resolution 40-21, making the necessary findings to deny the appeal and uphold the planning commission approval of CUP 20-03 for the site at 429 Tulare to allow an addition to a single-family residence. And Councilmember Addis seconded that. So we do have a motion and a second. Unless I see any raised hands for questions or comments, I'll ask for a roll call.
I'll make a quick comment, Mayor.
Yes, please. Yes.
I do want to thank Councilmember Heller for being the liaison to the Planning Commission. I know many of the commissioners personally and would agree with his comments about the care with which they approach various things that come before the Planning Commission. I want to appreciate them for their time in that. I also want to thank the appellant for coming forward. I know how difficult it is to have your neighborhood change, to have homes around you change, to have your view change, and I just want to appreciate that. And given that, I just didn't see anything that would make me think we had grounds to overturn the Planning Commission's decisions. But I did want to just let the appellant know that I am sensitive to the concerns. I understand why they would come forward, and I appreciate them taking the time to do that. But in this case, there just doesn't seem to be enough evidence to overturn the decision.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. I concur with both major points that you're making. We have a great planning commission. Thank you, Councilmember Hiller, for being the liaison and recognizing them. And with that, unless there are any other comments, I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Hiller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, I believe that was 5-0. And with that, that brings us to item B-2. This is adoption of resolution number 4121, directing the levy of the annual assessment for the Cloisters Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance Assessment District. We have received the preliminary report regarding this, and this is the second appearance and final public comment, or I should say public hearing regarding this item. So I'll again start with the staff report and any council questions. I will then open it up for public comment and open the public hearing, close public comment, close the public hearing, bring it back for discussion and motion. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Liebig. I see you're ready to go, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you said, this is item B2. It's a public hearing for the adoption of Resolution 4121, directing the levy of the annual assessment for the Cloisters Landscape Lighting Maintenance Assessment District. Staff is recommending that council conduct this final public hearing, adopt resolution number 4121, approving the levy of the assessment for fiscal year 21-22. As you stated, this is the third step in the process to continue the assessment district for this next year. On April 13th, 2021, Council initiated the proceedings and directed preparation of the annual engineer's report. On May 11th this year, Council approved the engineer's report and set the date for tonight of the public hearing. And tonight, we're going to conduct a public hearing, and staff is recommending to adopt the resolution to continue the assessment. The assessment is $1,241.20 per assessable parcel for a total of $148,944 for the maintenance of the Cloisters Park and open space areas. That concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob. Very much appreciated. Thank you for your work on this as usual. I'm always amazed at the amount of work that gets done for the amount of dollars that are spent. So with that, I'm getting a little feedback. Rob, maybe turn your camera off.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe.
Councilmember Barton, your mic is open. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Also, with that, I'll go ahead and ask if there are any council member questions of Mr. Liebig. So raise your hand, please. Seeing no raised hands, I will go ahead then and open up the public hearing, open up public comment. This is public comment for item B-2. The information to access via our Zoom link is noted on the screen, as well as the phone numbers. Be sure to use the raise hand and or *9 to raise your hand if you're calling in. And public comment is now open. Anthony, do we have any public comments, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay, so I will go ahead and close public comment, close the public hearing as well, bring it back to council and entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Second the motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Addis for the staff recommendation, second by Councilmember Davis, I believe. And any further discussion or comments? Hearing none, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis? Yes. Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Good. Thank you again, Rob, for, as always, a succinct, excellent report. Appreciate all your work on this, and that'll move us to item B-3. This is our third public hearing. This is same process as outlined previously. It's the adoption of resolution number 42-21, directing the levy of the annual assessment for the North Point Natural Area Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance Assessment District. And Mr. Livick, you are up again, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a similar item to the one we last did, and staff is recommending that council conduct the public hearing and approve the levy for the annual assessment of the North Point Natural Area Landscape Lighting Maintenance Assessment District by adopting resolution number 42-21. Similar to the cloisters, on April 13th, we initiated the proceedings, and council ordered the preparation of the engineer's report on May 11th. Council approved the engineer's report and set tonight as the date for the public hearing. Tonight, we're conducting a public hearing, and staff is recommending to continue the assessment. The assessment amount is $564.50 per assessable parcel, for a total of $5,645 for the maintenance of the North Point natural area. That concludes my brief presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob. If you'll close your mic for us, that'd be great. And I'll open it up for any council questions of Mr. Livick. Looking for any raised hands? Seeing no raised hands, I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing. Open up public comment. This is public comment for item B-3 on our agenda this evening. Public comment is now open. Information to access public comment is on the screen. And Anthony, do we have any public comment at present?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and close public comment, close the public hearing, and either entertain a motion or further discussion.
I'll move to approve this item.
Councilmember Harrell, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I was just going to make a motion. I'll second.
Okay, do one second, great.
Motion, approve the staff recommendation, item B3.
Perfect. Councilmember Addis moved, seconded by Councilmember Hiller for the staff recommendation. And are there any further comments? Seeing no raised hands, I will go ahead and ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis? Yes. Councilmember Barton? Yes. Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Good. Thank you again, Rob, for your presentation, and we appreciate it. You have your hand raised. Did you want to?
Yes, I neglected to. I was going to do a little advertising for the Cloisters Maintenance Assessment District. We're having the annual Cloisters Maintenance Inspection Walk or tour of the facilities this coming Thursday at 2 p.m. Meet near the restrooms at Cloisters Park for all those Cloisters residents that are interested in voicing their opinion and on the maintenance. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I appreciate that notice. That brings us to our first business item. This is item C-1 this evening. This is the consideration of adoption of resolution 43-21, adopting the fiscal year 21-22 operating and capital budgets. Resolution number 44-21, adopting the city's master combined salary schedule, approving job classifications for the fire marshal, division chief, senior administrative services analyst, and finance manager, adopting a series of resolutions amending and or readopting the city's financial policies, and adopt resolution number 54-21, extending the expanded and increased COVID-19 utility discount and subsidy program. That's a mouthful. And with that, I'm welcoming back Ms. Lichtig. Katie, thank you. This item has been before us before in detail through a study session reviewed by CFAC prior to that. And so it's here tonight for final consideration for approval. With that, Katie, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council members, and I'd like to share my screen.
And I might mention also, we're working from the supplemental staff report that was sent out, I believe, earlier today. So thank you.
That's correct. Which had the financial forecast in it, which I will provide to you. Stand by.
Isabel.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor and City Council members of the Morro Bay community, I'm pleased to present to you your fiscal year 2021-22 budget for adoption. This includes your operating budget as well as your capital budget. I'm going to just turn it over to the city manager for some opening remarks. To refresh the community about your goals and how they align with the budget, and we'll get on with the details in just a couple slides.
Yes, thank you, Katie. And again, just want to say thank you, Katie, and the finance team, administrative team for pulling together such a tremendous budget with a lot of moving pieces and new information that changes almost daily. And really excited to bring forward a budget that allows us to make some significant strides in achieving our city council goals, particularly in the first one, which council identified a couple of years ago, is the top goal, which is achieving financial and economic sustainability for our community. But beyond that, also will allow us to begin investments, or beyond our wastewater treatment plant, begin investments in other aspects of our community, such as stormwaters, paving, our parks, etc. And that falls under the heading of improving public infrastructure and public spaces. And then cities made significant strides in the city's land use plans by moving forward the general plan, a local coastal program, and now onto the zoning code. And the budget does sort of contemplate, in at least our work plans, efforts we can make to help address affordable housing in the future. And improving our community outreach and engagement is going to be a big lift next year. I think we've seen some drop in participation. I think that's just natural given the fact we went through a pandemic, and we really want to make strides to re-engage our community in different ways. And ultimately, council was made the strong effort with COVID-19 to add that as a temporary goal related to the public health and economic emergencies related to the pandemic. So again, this budget really sets out to move us forward, and we think about where we were just a year ago and the things we're contemplating with the cuts that were made, and concern about the future of our organization and its existence in some respects. And now we find ourselves in a place where our funds are balanced. We have new sources of revenue thanks to our community in passing Measure E, and combined with Measure Q allows us to begin investments in not only our harbor but also in other capital needs. We're investing in our staff by restoring their pay cuts and extending 5% increases to help us remain competitive with our region, giving them the tools that they need to do their job effectively, enhancing services to our community, investments in capital improvement, putting more money into our reserves with enhanced financial policies, and that really plays into the general fund emergency so that we're prepared. Reserve, that is, we're prepared for the next emergency that will come. We don't know what it will be, but we will be prepared financially for that. So those are just the high points, and again, just want to say thank you to Katie for exemplary leadership with the finance team, and obviously looking forward to having Sarah jump on board, but we will miss you, and this budget you created was awesome, so thanks.
Thank you, Scott, for your leadership and your trust and confidence in me. I really appreciated that. This outlines the recommendations that are in front of the council. I tried to color code them towards the parts of the presentation. So the first one is in blue, and it relates to the adoption of the budget and the resolution. The next two are related to personnel-related actions of approving the master combined salary schedule and approving the new job descriptions as mentioned by the mayor. The next are, with the exception of number 13, are revisions based on the work of the ad hoc committee that was made up of Mayor Heading and Councilmember Davis to either make modifications or staff identified a couple that we wanted to recommend changes to for the authorized transactions officials because there were names in the resolutions, and in many cases, those same staff are no longer here. And then the last one is a policy question for the council about the utility discount program and whether to extend it until December 31 of this current year and then restore the program back to the same size that it was previously. So just a refresher, these numbers are from the proposed budget, so they're slightly different in terms of the changes that are being proposed, but not remarkably so. In the staff report, I identified that we were changing some instances in the general fund, basically less than 0.4%, and so it's a very minor changes. So overall, revenues and transfers in that next year will be at about $148 million, and that includes a significant investment in the WRF, and I'm trying to remember the correct acronym or the correct title for the WRF, and it's escaping me right now. The Water Reclamation Facility. This indicates the split between capital projects and other operating expenditures, and so we'll be proposing to spend approximately $145.8 million. Again, a substantial portion of that is in the capital budget. The city is planning to restore a number of positions, so we'll essentially be slightly less than we were in 2018 and 19 before the pandemic struck. In terms of general fund expenditures, we're planning to spend approximately $15.5 million on all of the functions that are identified in the pie chart in the different colors. So these are the general fund departments that provide general benefits to the community. And then this is an overall explanation of how the money is being spent in the general fund. And because there are so many functions that are covered within the Public Works Department that are supported by the general fund, that's the smaller pie chart on the right-hand side. And again, the capital project is identified here. The wharf construction is 91% of the overall expenditures that we're planning to make as it relates to capital expenditures and improvements in the community. So as the mayor mentioned, we issued the general fund financial forecast today. This is a 5-year look ahead with the concurrence of the council. It includes next year and the 4 years after that. This indicates a very positive outlook. If you look down at the bottom line, which is the percentage of Measure Q, Measure E expenditures in general fund compared to the reserve that we will have. Last year, we ended the year on June 30th of 2020 with approximately 18.2% of a reserve. If the projections for the current fiscal year are realized by the end of the June, as well as closing the books, we are hopeful to have 35.9% of the expenditures in savings, and then it goes up and then it slightly dips in the 5th year. One of the reasons that this exists is because of the positive ending balance in the general fund for the current year. So we're projecting right now, and it is just estimates, that we may end the year on a net annual positive where revenues exceed expenditures by $1.459 million. That's in the yellow, right in the middle of the page for the estimated column. We also know that we had a beginning balance from the previous year of $930,000. And so we had the potential to end the year of the current fiscal year almost $2.4 million to the better. What that means is that there will be no transfers out from the general fund reserves or the general fund emergency reserve in this current year. We had anticipated at mid-year that we could need as much as $671,000 to balance the budget. And because of improved financial revenue conditions, as well as the cost containment that happened earlier in the year, we believe that this is a realistic projection. Which means that not only the general fund will end up with an ending balance of almost 2.4, but the ending balance in the general fund emergency reserve, or also called the GFR, will end up with a little bit more than that. So we will end the fiscal year, this current fiscal year, with $4.808 million in reserves. Typically what happens is at the end of the fiscal year, a transfer happens from the general fund into the general fund emergency reserve so that those funds become available and set aside in the emergency reserve. So this is a positive picture. What you can see also in the yellow line is that the general fund has a 5-year positive net annual balance where revenues are exceeding expenditures. I will note that the amount of difference between revenues and expenditures is not a huge amount, but it still is quite a turnaround from previous forecasts. The emergency reserve also, the general fund emergency reserve is also in a positive outlook. The last thing is that the council ad hoc committee has proposed to change the way that the general fund emergency reserve and percentage is calculated by adding in the Measure Q and Measure E operating costs to capture those ongoing costs that we should be saving money in case something happened to our revenue stream. And so this 5-year forecast includes in the next coming year $1.6 million, and it grows over time to make sure that the percentage that we're putting aside, and we'll discuss what that percentage should be. In the current policy, it's 25 and 28%. In the proposed changes, the ad hoc committee is proposing that it be changed to 33 to 50%. So, again, if the projections become a reality, at the end of the current fiscal year, we will have achieved the minimum that the council ad hoc committee is proposing. So the personnel-related recommendations include the approval of the master combined salary schedule, which is a traditional thing that gets done every year so that the pay changes that are currently authorized through memorandums of understanding can be implemented. And then it approves the new or revised job descriptions for the Fire Marshal, Division Chief, Senior Administrative Services Analyst, and the Finance Manager. Again, this is, I would say, a responsibility so that we can begin implementing the budget as soon as the fiscal year begins. I wanted to take an opportunity to summarize the proposed modifications. They fall into these 5 categories. Many of them are generally authorized when they're non-substantive. So if we have typographical errors, or we want to ensure that we're meeting best practices as defined by the Government Finance Officers Association, or GFOA. So generally, unless it's spelled out to have a substantive impact, we won't make that change. Or we'll make the change if it does not have a substantive impact. We're proposing a few modifications to two general fund revenue accounts for sales tax and commercial cannabis tax. Both are related to sales of cannabis in town. One is the sales tax, the general sales tax, the 1% that we receive through the state, and the other is the local cannabis tax. The operating expenditure changes are meant to align the departmental budget with organizational and our operational needs that have been identified after the proposed budget was published, and that's in the Community Development, Finance Department, and the Public Works Department. There are interfund transfers that are included on that list that is attached to the resolution that would implement the council's ad hoc committee on policy changes, which I'll just go into a little bit later. And then we've received additional U.S. Treasury Department guidance on the American Rescue Plan Act, and so we're intending to recommend to you, or we are recommending to you, changes so that we can be in compliance. I will say with that note that just yesterday, last Thursday, the Treasury Department again issued additional guidance, and so staff is anticipating that we're going to take the time between last Thursday and August and reevaluate the plan that we're putting in front of you and come to you and propose any changes, which probably will include eliminating some of the smaller expenditures, because the administrative costs associated with providing the reporting and ensuring that the costs are eligible really aren't worth it. So there will probably be some additional changes that are proposed in August. So the general fund revenues, here's the general amount, so $55,737 for sales tax due to the sale of cannabis. And again, it just was not previously included in the estimates provided by HDL, and so we updated that amount. Also, we're asking for the cannabis tax to be increased by a modest amount, so that so there's recognition for the two outlets and the amount of data that we have so far about their sales. On the expenditure side, on the Administrative Services Department, we're asking to make some changes in the positions of the Senior Administrative Analyst and the Finance Manager to create internal and external equity based on the job descriptions that are presented, and to ensure that we have staff capacity to serve the public. So we're asking for the amount of part-time staff dollars be equivalent to what it is this year. It had originally been proposed to be cut in half. And then for the Public Works and Community Development, they're anticipating sharing an administrative staff member to ensure that these two departments have the capacity to serve the public. I'll just briefly talk about the American Rescue Plan Act. We have been notified that we will be receiving $260,000 more than we originally thought that we were going to be allocated. So in total, the city has the potential to receive $2,500,220, and that's in comparison to what we initially thought was $1.98 million. So with that additional dollars, we're proposing that $25,000 be granted to nonprofits that were impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And this grant program will be run concurrently with the bequest program, but make sure that the nonprofits that are awarded this restricted dollars from the ARPA meet those qualifications. We're suggesting infrastructure and economic development investment in the downtown and the Embarcadero streetscape, such as potentially trash receptacle replacement for $25,000. And we believe that infrastructure investments in our city parks is warranted to replace the play equipment at City Park. So Scott suggested that I might try to make this more clear from a bubble graph, and so we'll give it a try and see if I hit the mark. So the additional Treasury Department regulations have made it clear that replenishing any reserve fund will be prohibited use of these dollars. So what we're proposing to do is take the $500,000 that was originally planned for pavement management from Measure Q and Measure E and actually have the American Rescue Plan Act fund the pavement management infrastructure investment. And on the flip side, we move the replenishment of the GFR from the American Rescue Plan Act to Measure Q and Measure E. Now this increases the amount of dollars that are going to the replenishment of the GFR in Measure Q and Measure E to $650,000 because there was already a planned $150,000 coming from Measure Q and Measure E. This felt like it was completely aligned with what was approved by the CFAC when they reviewed the Measure Q and E, because we're getting the same amount of work done and we're replenishing the GFR, it's just from a different source of funding. So I'm happy to answer questions, and hopefully the bubble diagram has helped and not hurt the cause of making this clear. So the ad hoc committee on financial policies is making recommendations 1 through 9, which includes some of the staff proposed changes. Again, I tried color coding, so 1 through 4 are modifications to those policies. 5 and 6 are administrative cleanups to make sure that the investment policy is up to date with the social responsibility language, as well as changing the positions from that can do investments from the names of the people to just the positions. 7, 8, and 9 are all just readopting those policies that have been bundled with other policies and adopted under one resolution. So this will make it easier administratively to track down those policies in the future. And then the resolution number 10 is related to the utility discount program through December 31st, and I'll talk about that separately. So the modification to the financial policy starts with the general fund emergency reserve policy. The ad hoc committee is proposing to change it from to 33% as the minimum and 50% as the target. That changes it from 25% and 28%. As I mentioned earlier, it also adds the Measure Q and E operating expenses when calculating the need or the percentage of the general fund emergency reserve. And then the ad hoc committee is also recommending transferring $600,000 from the risk management reserve, which currently is $1.7 million, to the general fund emergency reserve. And hand in hand, they're also recommending down here in Resolution 4821 to increase the reserves to $700,000 or $1 million. And so it will still reach its target level even with this transfer. The second one is revising the internal service fund reserves from a minimum of 200 and a target of 300. This doubles those reserves for the information technology internal service fund. And it is also recommending $100,000 be moved from the risk management reserve to the information technology internal service fund. The reality is that the IT internal service fund is not yet meeting its minimum, and so this additional investment is well served to try to enhance that reserve. The adoption of 4821 would, as I mentioned, have the minimum reserve be $700,000 for the risk management reserve and $1 million for that reserve. The question could be asked about why is it so large, and we think, and the risk manager, Dana Swanson, concurs that it is a wise policy to have sufficient reserves related to risk management because those events are so unpredictable. And while we've been doing great at trying to contain costs, you always want to have a buffer and a cushion in case a tragic incident happens. You hope that it won't, but again, you want to make sure that it does. And this just reflects the transfers to the General Fund Emergency Reserve and the Information Technology Internal Service Fund Reserve. And then the last item on this slide is the rescinding of the Tourism Accumulation Fund policy. So back in the day when the Tourism Improvement TBID was a city function, there was a need to have an accumulation fund policy, but now that it's transitioning to a nonprofit, it doesn't make sense for the city to have an accumulation fund policy. That really will be left up to the board of directors. The financial changes related to authorized personnel eliminates the names and refers to positions, and that relates to our investments at the local agency investment fund, which is a state-run investment fund, as well as our investment policy. And then the investment policy also incorporates the social responsibility language that was adopted separately the last time and has never been incorporated fully into that particular policy. The next three adopt policies that were previously adopted in resolutions with other policies, and again, administratively and for the city clerk, this makes it much clearer when you do a search. And then I just will mention that the utility discount program is also on the table. Staff reviewed the fund balance in the utility discount program, and it has a balance sufficient to continue the program through the end of the calendar year. I will note that the fund is not growing because we're not issuing any penalties or shut-off penalties. So this can't go on without a reevaluation of the total program and how it gets its revenue into the long term. So if the council wishes to extend the program beyond December 31st, 2021, I would recommend that an evaluation of the fund's viability over the long haul, if the council is in a position to continue the policy of not having any penalties or shutoffs, which I don't think is sustainable over the long haul, but the current guidance from the governor is that those are prohibited at least through September. And with that, I want to thank everybody on the city team, from the council and CPAC and the city manager and the department heads, as well as all of the team that has helped put this together. It's been a joy, and maybe not every day, but it has been a joy joy for me to participate with the City of Morro Bay in the development of its fiscal 21-22 budget, and I'm available for questions, as are a number of department heads and other city staff.
Katie, thank you. Very comprehensive. I like the bubble graph, by the way, so it worked for me. Nice, easy pictorial, brought it home. So we're going to go ahead and open it up for council questions. Thanks for going over the detailed policy changes. I want to thank my partner in crime, Councilmember Davis, and thank you, Katie, for leading us through a very comprehensive review of our financial policies, which are really mandated by policy that have to be done. But obviously some very extensive changes made to protect the city, and I appreciate Councilmember Davis working alongside to make that happen. The remainder of the items you've seen before, but I do want to open it up, obviously, for any council member questions that you may have. There's a lot of information here, and this would be the time to ask any questions. So, looking for a raised hand. So, Councilmember Addis, I see your hand. Yes, please.
Thank you, Mayor. My main question is around the utility discount program. And if we could get an analysis to see, how going back to the 10% might compare to keeping the 25%, or, maybe we want the discount program somewhere in between that. I've always appreciated council's willingness to have a utility discount program. And in the back of my mind, I feel like 10% might not be enough for those that need, or for those that qualify for the discount. That 10% is actually could be pretty small, given today's cost of living and the cost of living in Morro Bay, and particularly on the Central Coast. And so my goal, I think, is understanding the numbers a little bit more to see if and how that program might be expanded longer term. And if we could have the information come back, sometime before making a decision in December. And then my other question, and I don't know that it's necessarily a question now, or maybe I should ask when we talk about future budget items, but I think the idea of penalizing folks by turning off their access to water is fairly archaic at this point. And again, this might be a future agenda item, so stop me if I'm saying too much, but I would like to explore the idea of not turning off people's water as a retribution for not paying their bill. I think what we've seen during COVID is that human beings need access to water to stay clean. And it's important to all of us. And when you don't have access to water, it's an issue.
Valid.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Mayor.
I was just going to tell you, very valid point, and that would be an item that we want to talk about at the end to bring back quickly and evaluate. So yes, thank you for that.
So if those could be, I'll bring it up at the end, but I'm throwing it out there now. Sure. And then I just want to say thank you so much, Katie. You've been amazing during this time. I can't even imagine what it would be like to step in as an interim, to come out of retirement, to step in, to have COVID happen, to have some of the worst environmental disasters in our state's history with wildfires, etc., and to come out of retirement to navigate finances through all of that has just been amazing. So thank you so much. I know your shoes will be hard to fill. I love your color coding and your graphs. It makes something super complicated much more easy for all of us to understand. And I want to say thank you to the ad hoc committee, but I also want to comment on the 5-year projection, because when I started on CFAC, it was just bad news all the time, other than our finance director who is winning awards. But besides that, it was just bad news every time we looked at the budget or talked about finances, and we're in an incredibly different place now 3 or 4 years later. And I think it's important that council think about that as we go into thinking about our mission, our vision, our goals, how the community has really stepped up. I think the Chief Knuckles alluded to that, how the community has consistently stepped up for safety services. Council and staff have made a series of good decisions financially, and I hope we took that away as we talk about our goals in the coming months, and that the public takes part in that process. So, thank you. Those are all my questions and comments.
Thanks, Councilmember Addis. Appreciate that. Further questions? Looking for questions. Okay, seeing no hands raised. I'm going to go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment for item C-1. Any member of the public wishing to comment on item C-1, please do so now. And Anthony, do we have public comment, sir?
Thank you, Mayor Heading. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Thank you for that. We'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council. I will reiterate what I said earlier, and it's complimentary, similar to what Councilmember Addis mentioned. Katie, you've been a godsend to us. We have appreciated so much how quickly you stepped in and adapted and took control and not only maintained things but advanced things within the finance department. And we so appreciate not only your abilities but your personhood and how you interact with staff, and what a great fit you are in Morro Bay. It's been a pleasure working with you. The confidence that you instill in council with regard to what you present is so much appreciated, and we're just I just think we have been blessed to have you show up at the right time, the right place, and we are so thankful for that. So I just want to add those comments to what Councilmember Addis stated, and we certainly wish you well. I know you said it was a joy to work almost all days, but there must have been a couple that were a little bit strenuous where it wasn't so joyful, but I get that. That's part of working in the public sector, isn't it? This is an encouraging budget. There are some major policy changes that are designed. Councilmember Davis and I thought long and hard to protect the city, to increase our level of reserves for events that might occur in the future. And I appreciate Katie's guidance all the way through that. I know this isn't a top-down but a bottom-up budget that has involved every department head, many staff members, and I also am appreciative of everybody's involvement in making this happen. It's exciting to see that there's a potential positive financial future for the city of Morro Bay. We still have some work to do, but this is encouraging and allows us to do some things that, in my opinion, we haven't been able to do in the past. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Collins for his hard work on this and his leadership overall with regard to not only the preparation but his constant look towards the goals that we've set, and making sure that our budget matches operationally and through a capital standpoint what our goals are for the city. And so kudos and thanks to all. I'm ready to move, but I'll take further comments. Councilmember Davis, I see your hand, sir.
Yes, thank you. First, I want to agree with everything that Councilmember Addis said and avoid the political trap of repeating it. But I do want to repeat the concept that the people of Morro Bay voted to tax themselves as well as visitors to increase city revenue for the purpose of increasing services that the city delivers to them. And I want us to never forget that as we go through our goal-setting process, that the people have trusted us with their money to provide increased services that will help everyone. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis. Appreciate that. Councilmember Heller, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You've expressed pretty much everything that needs to be said at this point, but I want to make sure that you and Councilmember Davis get the full credit that you deserve for the resolutions that you've included as part of this budget that are just so solid, particularly the first one in terms of upping the amount that we need to have in our general fund emergency reserve account. So very important. We've learned our lesson, I think. And it's refreshing and encouraging to see the policies change and reflect what we have learned. I too am encouraged and impressed by this budget. All the people that had worked on this, CFAC, all the staff members, Mr. Collins, Katie, of course, but I didn't want your work, Mayor, and that of Councilmember Davis to go unnoticed. It's a significant part of what we're looking at. Very, very impressive work. I couldn't be happy with it, and we've been fortunate, but beyond being fortunate, everyone who's worked on that has just done an outstanding job, and I'm thoroughly impressed, and I want to thank you. Thank you all for your work.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Any other comments? Okay. Hearing none, seeing none, I'd be happy to entertain a motion or make a motion. I'll go ahead and move it. I recommend that we adopt resolution number 43-21 authorizing the fiscal year 21-22 operating and capital budgets, including amendments approved by the City Council prior to the adoption of that resolution, and adopt resolution number 44-21 approving the fiscal year 21-22 master combined salary schedule, and approved new or revised job descriptions for fire marshal, division chief, senior administrative services analyst, and finance manager, and adopt resolution number 45-21 approving the revised general fund emergency reserve policy, and adopt resolution number 4621 approving the revised internal services fund reserve policy, and adopt resolution number 4721 rescinding the tourism accumulation fund policy, and adopt resolution 48-21 approving the revised risk management reserve policy, and adopt resolution number 49-21 approving the revised local agency investment fund transaction officers, and adopt resolution 50-21 approving the revised investment policy, and adopt resolution 51-21 readopting the harbor reserve policy, and adopt resolution number 52-21 adopting the reserve policy, and adopt resolution number 53-21 readopting the expenditure policy, and lastly adopt resolution number 54-21 extending the utility discount program through December 31st, 2021, and asking staff to bring back an evaluation of future viability of the fund over the long-term period.
I will second.
That goes to the runner. Motion by Mayor Heading for the staff report. Second, I think, by Councilmember Davis, just under the wire. Further comments or discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis? Yes. Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great. Kudos, staff. Great job. Thank you so much. That brings us to item, let me find it.
Mayor?
Yes.
Say one thing.
Yes, Katie, please.
I just, while I joked about it being a joy most days, it really has been my pleasure to serve the community of Morro Bay and the council and CFAC. And, you know, I've looked back on my retirement version 1.0 and have been thinking about it quite a lot in the last few days. And I have to say that this one is sweeter and more fulfilling because of the work that I've been able to do with Scott and the rest of the executive team and you and the CPAC and the citizens of Morro Bay. And so I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to serve. It's been my passion in my professional career to be able to serve, and this is truly an amazing capstone to that career. And so I want to just express my gratitude and respect for the work that's being done. And I have to say, after having been a city manager and now having gotten the opportunity to work for another city manager, you've got a gem, and I hope that he knows how much he's appreciated and what good energy he brings to the team and to the city, and a vision that is really, really positive. And so I just really am grateful that you gave me the chance to say that, not just to him, but to you all and to the community. So again, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you around town.
Thank you, Katie. I'm sure those non-joyous days were when you had to deal with Councilmember Davis and I revising those policies. Great, thank you so much. Okay, that brings us to item C-2. This is approval of amendment number 4 to the Water Reclamation Facility Program Management Contract and authorization for the Public Works Director to sign the agreement to cover planned program management costs for fiscal year 21-22. And I believe I'm turning it over to Mr. Leidick. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council. I am going to share my screen with the presentation. And hopefully everybody can see the typical WRF title slide with the great picture of the rock.
You got it. It's there.
Thank you again. The staff is recommending that City Council authorize the City Manager, Public Works Director, or Public Works Director sign amendment number 4 to the existing agreement with Crollo Engineers. Their original agreement was dated April of 2018 for continued program management of the Water Reclamation Facility Project in an increased amount for this next fiscal year of $5,454,352 to cover the estimated program management scope of work and costs that will be in this coming year. I also want to say that there are members of city staff here, our city manager, Mr. Collins, Greg, our public works director, Joe Miller, our utilities manager, along with members of the program management team to answer questions that might arise. For this next fiscal year, we have some new activities that will be included in program management, including permitting support for our new pretreatment ordinance that Council adopted earlier this year. They're continuing, they'll be providing funding support for our newly approved construction loan and hopefully our approved Title 16 grant, public outreach on the pretreatment ordinance and our recycled water facilities, development of a request for proposal for the design of the recycled water component of the facilities, procurement of a designer for the recycled water facilities, and technical support services and program coordination during this preliminary and final design of the recycled water facilities. In addition to that, we're continuing many of the tasks that have been going this year and previous years. I'm not going to read this complete list, but some of the key items are, the project controls, monitoring and management to make sure we remain on task, on schedule, permitting support for not just land use, but all of our environmental and cultural permitting. We have to develop an outfall management plan that's underway. working with other program consultants and managing their work, including both their subcontractors and consultants that contract directly to the city. Providing construction management services for both the on-site facility, the wharf facility itself, and the conveyance facility. And the site planning and basis of design, the pilot wells for the ultimate recycled water facilities. Some program management activities have been completed, starting with the initial task that they had was evaluation of the project. We've implemented the project. We have a design build team on board that has been working for a little over a year now, working to negotiate that design build contract. We've designed the conveyance facilities, and we procured a contractor anvil for construction of those conveyance facilities. Now into the dollar amounts. When initially envisioned, after their first few months on the job, Corollo estimated approximately $7.7 million for program management expenses. Currently, we're estimating about $12.4 million, or 8.6% of the estimated total project costs. Typically, the range for program management of these more complex water wastewater projects is in the range of 7 to 10%. Here is next in the slide is a listing of the contract amendments, starting with the original contract for about $290,000, and each year council has allocated budget to cover that year's scope of work, culminating with our highest spend year of this year, amendment number 4 for $5,454,000. $352. Sorry, I can't get that out. This has been reduced working with the program management team of about $185,000 by optimizing the program controls budget and the public outreach scope. We also think there is going to be a future amendment for the next fiscal year, somewhere in the range of about $500,000 to complete the project. A little summary, a different way of putting these numbers out there. We expect to spend about total spend through this fiscal year for total project management about $5.7 million. This year's budget will carry over to the next fiscal year about $666,000. The anticipated need for next year is about $5.9 million, including that carryover. And then we expect to carry over another $374,000 into the next fiscal year to complete the project with another budget amendment. Some of the scope changes responsible for increases in the program management fee as originally envisioned by the Corollo team. We've had additional public outreach efforts, a significant increase in public outreach efforts. There's been inclusion of some out-of-scope items that the program management team didn't anticipate when the original estimates were developed. For example, the development of the pretreatment ordinance and the scope items related to that. Much of that work was going to be prepared in-house by City Moore-based staff. Unfortunately, we do not have the resources and the time available to develop that and to complete that item. And then there's been additional construction management effort associated with time changes with the work project schedule, including delays due to cultural resources and environmental resources. that concludes my brief staff report. And like I said, there are members of the program management team, along with other city staff, available to answer questions that you might have. Appreciate your time, and glad to hear any questions.
And Mayor, if I may comment on, and thank you, Bob, so much for that presentation. I just want to note and thank Mayor Heading and Councilmember Heller, who serve on the WARF subcommittee team, and in addition to Rob Livick and Joe Mueller and Public Works Director Greg Wallach reviewing the submitted draft amendment for Councilmember Heller and Mayor Heading reviewed it intensely several weeks ago, and we're able to work with the Corollo team to revise the overall amendment down by about $185,000, and not just an exercise to trim, but to find areas that perhaps there were some redundancies or programmatic things that we could do without, understanding there may be some consequences, but ultimately trying our best to rein in the expenses. So I just want to extend my thanks to the two of you for your great work on that.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that. This is time for general council questions, and so I'm going to open it up for any general council questions, but if you have remarks at the end, we can do that after public comment. So any questions yes, Councilmember Heller, sir. You're muted, sir. You're muted. There you go.
You didn't want to hear what I just said. No, I just said, what a surprise. I had some questions. So and thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Collins, for those kind words. This is a challenging project, as everybody knows. There have been some bumps in the road along the way. A lot of community members are concerned about where the final cost is going to land. The emails and questions that I get from people have to do with the management fees that we're paying. And if I have my numbers correctly, I think the estimate for managing the entire program originally that we got from Corollo was $7.6 million. Then project moved forward, it got up to 9.7, and now it's standing at a proposed $12.4 million in management fees, a 60% increase in the original estimate. So it kind of undermines confidence to a certain extent in Corollo's original estimate. And I know we hired Corollo because of their experience in these projects, and I'm just wondering if Kyle or somebody could comment on why the fees have increased by 60%, A, and B, what are the total fees going to be at the end of this? And we just kind of lost, I personally kind of lost confidence in where this is going to end up. So,
Councilmember Heller, thank you for the question. And again, I'm Kyle Rowe with Corollo Engineers, Mayor and members of City Council. It's nice to be with you guys again. The very simple answer to the question, Councilmember Heller, is that back in 2018, we did our very best to project out, a 5-year program with not only 3 moving parts in terms of project elements and a very, very complicated wastewater treatment plan, which has never been built for what's going to go on in Morro Bay with the IPR, a complicated conveyance, and a complicated, like I said, IPR for the injections, all through a very culturally sensitive area. We took our best guess in terms of what it costs from a procurement, from a controls, from a construction management perspective. And to be completely honest, as the years went by and the program developed, we just realized we had to throw more resources at delivering the program management services required. In very simple terms, our scope just kept getting bigger and the needs just kept getting greater. Things like archaeological monitoring, for instance, things like permitting, the number of permit agencies and applications and maintenance of those permits is nothing I have ever seen in my 27 years of doing this work. We now have two funding agencies that are demanding, and hopefully we have three funding agencies. Fingers crossed we get money from Bureau of Rec. So, not to be long-winded, the scope is just gets bigger and bigger, or it has gotten bigger and bigger. I think I've said this to the council, I think the last time we were together, that I am pretty comfortable in the overall program budget right now, all in. I think that what you're going to see in the Q4 report that I gave you a sneak preview of during our last presentation, I think the degree of conservatism in there and the reliability of those estimates is pretty good. I'm not going to guarantee that's where it's going to end, but I'm pretty comfortable with what we have there. As far as Carollo's amendment is concerned, moving forward, this is by far the biggest lift. The program from Amendment 3 to Amendment 4 has essentially tripled in size. This was essentially a wastewater treatment plant project, and now it's a 3-element program. The $500,000 that Rob showed in his slide is our best guess at the next budget amendment, which is going to put us somewhere at 23 overall, which is still within the range of program management fees against the program cost of 7 to 10%. While we're kind of in the middle or possibly towards the higher third of the fee percentage, I will offer that this isn't a typical program management assignment that would fall within that range. We're providing extensive permitting and design services and things like that that are services that aren't often found in program management assignments. So I've said before, and I'll continue saying it, I know this is a big number. This is a very expensive contract, and we absolutely appreciate that. And we are doing the very best we can. Just as a reminder to those watching, the budget amendment 4 was a bottom-up effort. We didn't start with task level budgets and figure out how many hours we can stick in there. We started with how many hours it's going to take to accomplish at a subtask level, a very detailed level, what we think it would take to get it done. And that said, you, Councilmember Heller, Mayor Heading, the discussions we had during the work subcommittee meeting where I promised to you we will be as efficient as possible, and we made some reductions. Granted, $180,000 against $5.4 million isn't a whole lot of money, but it was a good exercise in sharpening the pencil a little bit and making sure you're getting those services that you absolutely need and that provide the best value. And that said, what we don't spend does carry over. We're relying on $600,000 plus that we didn't spend last year to augment this fiscal year, and we'll do the same moving forward.
So is it your expectation that the next year budget will be more or less than 5.6 that is being proposed for this coming year?
My anticipation is that the next amendment that you will get, which would be allocation number 5, our early predictions right now is that we will have to be coming back for another $500,000 to augment a carryover somewhere around $400,000. So that was our spend in the final fiscal year, about $1 million, based on what we see right now.
Okay. What else? Okay, those are my questions on this amendment. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Kyle.
You bet.
Thank you, Councilmember Heller.
Thank you. Looking for any raised hands for further questions? Seeing no raised hands, I will go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment for item C-2 on the agenda this evening. Public comment is now open for item C-2. And Anthony, sir, do we have any public comment?
Thank you, Honorable Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay, thank you. I'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to council. I'll go ahead and start with some summary comments, having been involved in the very beginning of this project and until this point. And I also want to recognize Councilmember Hiller, who joined me on the WRF subcommittee, brings his program management skill set, which has enlightened me in a number of areas. And I will say that we did spend hours going through each of the tasks for this this item that's up before us tonight, and it's nice to see some changes, but I think the strong message that we delivered was an expectation that this is going to be managed very, very carefully, that any potential surprises are going to be communicated very early, and hopefully there will be none, but that the WRF subcommittee is committed to reviewing very closely each of the tasks on a routine basis. For myself, I will say that this particular period of time, given the magnitude of what's going on with the overall project, there would be an expectation that this would be the heaviest or the most costly portion of program management, given the complexity of what's happening. That's a fact of life. We knew going in that the initial estimate based on scope was somewhere around $7.5 million. That has increased, as mentioned, rather dramatically, but also have the issues surrounding this project increased rather dramatically, not the least of which had to do with the pipeline conveyance system and a number of issues associated with that, cultural resource issues. But I think what I took away that was significant for me in terms of costs, this is new territory. This is a very innovative project. This is a recycling, indirect potable reuse recycling project that, from what I understand in talking with our program manager, really there aren't many rules that exist, and the permitting complexity and the number of agencies that are involved in permitting, especially at this stage of the game, are very, very, very significant. And so that, there are benefits that come with that. We get water sustainability, water independence in the future for the community, but that will come at a certain price. I understand that. If you look at benchmarks, this does seem to fit within the context of what percentage of total project program management costs should or usually are, if you look again at benchmarks. But again, it's very hard to compare this project to any other project on the books or around it that I think I can find, or anybody that can find. The message I hear from our program manager is that next year there's an anticipation that the program management costs will be about $500,000, and that's good news because that's a minimal last scope or task list that will not be that expensive. However, we remain committed to accountability and watching this very closely. I'm satisfied with our program management services. I've said it all along. I believe Carollo is a world-class organization that is managing to expectations. I've talked extensively with our staff who feel the same way, and I'm confident they will deliver a project that we will all be proud of. I will state further that it's fortunate that our debt service costs have been decreased so dramatically, and I do believe that had a lot to do with not only the good fortune of timing, but also significant work by our program management team to go after low-interest loans and funding. One of 12 communities in the nation to get WIFIA 2 or 3 years ago when we were approved, unheard of. We're getting 0.86% financing because of the hard work of our program management team. I'm convinced of that. We are now going through an SRF process that allowed us to lock in a 0.9% interest rate. It took a heavy lift on the part of our program management team to make that happen because we don't have a signed agreement. That, to me, is a significant return on investment, and I just wanted to make those statements up front. I do appreciate the services that you're providing. However, we will continue to vet all expenses very, very closely, as Council Member Heller and I have committed to with regard to everything that occurs in the future. So I'll stop there. Those are my comments. I do support the recommendation, but want to open it up to any other comments. Looking for hands, seeing no hands or thumbs. Then I will go ahead and move approval of and authorize the city manager to sign amendment number 4 to the existing agreement with Corollo Engineers dated April 11th, 2018 for continued program management of the water reclamation facility project in an increased amount of $5,454,352 to cover estimated program management scope of work and costs for the fiscal year 21-22.
May I comment, Mayor, before?
Absolutely, yes. Yes.
I guess the main thing I want to say at this point is that it's hard for me to support this. I'm trying to be reasonable about this, but I do think the fees that we're paying for this project are excessive. My experience for highly technical projects like this, the fees are generally 6 to 7% of the contract cost, not 7 to 10. I know this is a difficult project, but I think, to be blunt, I think I've answered this for 2 years. The reports are too long. I don't like reading them. It's some information that most of us don't understand anyway. And I see dollar signs when I see your reports. That's one thing that just is a pet peeve of mine. The other is, I'm tried to get Corollo to talk about guaranteeing a maximum cost, a maximum price for your services for this project, and it seems to me you're far enough along that you should be able to do that, but Corollo won't even talk about that. It won't talk about shared savings. So I really feel like we're being taken advantage of, to be frank. You guys are doing a good job, but we're paying too much for it. So I will not be approving this particular amendment. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Other comments? Or is there a second on the motion, I should say?
I'll second the motion, and I also have a comment.
Yes, Councilmember Addis.
I don't love the rising costs by any stretch. I'm heartened that rates are going to stay what they are, but I'm hearing rates are not going to go up. And each time these pieces come in front of us, that's the first thing on my mind, is our rates going to go up? And I think, that's incredibly important to the residents of Morro Bay. I think the best thing we can do with this project is to get it done and get it done safely, to move it forward. That's what's going to stop us from continuing to pay increased fees, and this is no ding to Corollo, but it's just the reality of a project, is we have to finish it, we have to finish it safely. And it's incredibly complicated, and we have to finish it and finish it safely without rates going up. So for that reason, I see the progress that's being made. I have, seen and read and listened to how complicated the project is. But we have to move it forward, because that's what's going to free our residents up, and our council and our staff, to spend time on the future of Morro Bay. There's another future for Morro Bay that involves clean water, it involves water security, it involves clean energy. I think we heard our chief speak earlier about Morro Bay in 20, 30 years and the legacy that we are building of being a green hub. And that includes water security. And so I very much appreciate that. And I'm ready to move this forward and take a vote.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. Any further comments? Seeing no raised hands, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller? Councilmember Heller?
No, sorry.
Thank you. Mayor Heading?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. That ends item C2. That brings us to item C-3. This is approval of amendment number 5 to contract services agreement with Alshire Winder, LLP for city attorney services. And I think I'm turning it over to Mr. Collins. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor and council members, members of the community. Quick presentation here. Staff is recommending that City Council approve amendment number 5 to contract services agreements with Alshire Winder, or A&W for short, for city attorney services for the city of Morro Bay. The proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget for legal services supports the contract services amendment as recommended. In short, just give a quick background. The city brought on A&W to provide city attorney services on an interim basis in March 2014, and then moved them into a permanent contract later that year. The city has extended one increase back in 2018. We're taking their rates up $10 per hour across the various services that they provide, or categories that they provide. Since that time, just kind of comparing to other city staff, if you will, the city across all the bargaining groups have received COLA increases, both in 2019 of 2%, and most recently with the approval of the budget tonight, a 5% increase for city employees effective July 1st of 2021. The A&W team, led by Chris Niemeyer, played a really pivotal role in our response to COVID-19, the pandemic. A lot of extraordinary work done in that ever-evolving space. And in addition to that, they did take a pay cut, much like our employees did, of a 10% value, whereas most city employees took a 5% pay cut through most of 2020. And now that we're moving out of the throes of the pandemic and seeing some improvement financially, A&W is requesting a $5 per hour increase with a limited travel reimbursement to go along with that. And comparing again to what the city employees have received in terms of COLA increases, this seems to fall right in line. The staff report outlines what that $5 increase would do across the various categories of service provided by A&W. And when compared to rates that we did a survey on back in 2018, this still falls well within the range that we got back from other cities in our region. The proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget includes a total of $483,000 for general legal services and $365,000 for the wharf. And again, as I mentioned, the $5 increase that's being requested and travel reimbursement are essentially included within those budgeted amounts, so there won't be a budget impact. So again, I am recommending the council approve amendment number 5, which includes the $5 per hour increase across the various categories and limited travel reimbursement to the contract services agreement with A&W, and happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for that presentation. Appreciate it very much. I'll open it up for any council questions, and looking for raised hands. Seeing no raised hands, I will go ahead and open up public comment. This is public comment for item C-3 on our agenda. Public comment is now open. And Anthony, do we have any public comment on this item, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. I do not see any raised hands in the queue.
Okay, I will close public comment and bring it back to council for further discussion or to entertain a motion. Let me just make a comment that I have been absolutely well pleased with the services provided by Chris Neumeier. He is an excellent city attorney. He is meticulous in his review of items. He has a wonderful understanding of public and city law, and I appreciate the depth of his group. He has helped us in a number of different areas. In terms of not only bringing in appropriate other staff members that have expertise and knowing when to do that, but also more recently worked very closely with Chris on the Vistra Energy agreement and spent hours and hours going through more legal issues than I ever wanted to in my life. So I really appreciate Chris and his services for our city. He also gave up significantly during the COVID time when the city was suffering financially. I very much appreciate that, and also his willingness to have foregone an increase over the prior period. So I'll be supporting this motion. Thanks. Councilmember Heller, I see your hand, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. I've got to say that, Chris, I just think you've done an outstanding job for the city. You've brought in resources from your firm when needed. When not needed, but definitely when they are needed, they're there. Your response time is just extremely prompt and thorough, and you just have been doing a great job. And the sacrifices that you made financially during the pandemic have not gone unnoticed. And I'm very happy to move the approval of agenda item C3.
We do have a motion by Councilmember Heller. I'll go ahead and second that, Councilmember, and ask if there's further comment or discussion on this item. Councilmember Addis, I see you. Is your hand about to go up? Yes.
Yeah, I'll echo both of you, but I think it's a celebration that not only is the city attorney, but earlier in the meeting, as you talked about, Mayor, that our bargaining units also were able to have compensation, and our organization is largely made of people, and it's important that we honor the people that do the work to keep the city running, and it's a celebration that we were able to do that this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Addis. Any further comments? Councilmember Barton, is your mic open? Did you have a comment?
I guess I would like to add on to some of the other comments that have been made. It has been such a pleasure working with Chris and with his firm, having oftentimes needing to bring in specialty legal help and having it within his firm so that it's easy to be served in that way. It's just really been a pleasure working with your firm.
Thank you. Appreciate those comments. Councilmember Davis, I see your hand. Yes.
Yes, just to echo everyone else, the wide range of expertise that A&W has been able to bring to us has smoothed the path for us in many ways as we have wrestled with unbelievable barriers to so many of our projects. Sometimes I feel as if there are forces just lying in wait for us to come along, and they come out at us, and we shine Chris on them. And so Chris, just really appreciate you and your firm. Thank you very much.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well articulated. Thank you, Councilmember Davis. As always, our senior statesman, and I mean that in a positive manner. So with that, we do have a motion and a second, and if there are no further comments, I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Addis?
Yes.
Councilmember Barton?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Councilmember Heller?
Yes.
And Mayor Heading?
Yes.
The motion carries 5-0.
Chris, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And that brings us to item D, council declaration of future agenda items. Councilmember Addis, please.
I have two things that I wanted to bring forward. One is about water, turning off people's water, and what else we can do when folks don't pay their bill for whatever reason, what alternatives we have. I understand there may be laws at the state level, and staff may need to dig a little bit deeper, but as we think about how we approach our water rates and our discount programs, I'd like to ask my colleagues on council if they would support a future agenda item to look at alternatives to shutting people's water off.
I support it.
As do I.
Yeah, I'll support that too.
Yeah. So you've got that one done.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for bringing that forward.
And then the other one is to bring back an item to look at passing a resolution for the city of Morro Bay to state explicitly that we support free, fair, and enfranchised elections that allow all citizens to vote and have the maximum access to voting possible. And I'll just remind us that our county had one of the highest voter turnouts in the state in the last election. I think we were fourth, actually, in the state across our county. And Morro Bay was, I believe, top in the county. So I think we've always existed in a situation where we believed that that we never had to pass a resolution supporting free, fair, and enfranchised elections. But since November 2020, we've seen a number of things happen across our county that give me reason to pause and to really wonder how free and accessible voting is going to be in the future. The most recent of which was when the county supervisors decided to have the most restrictive voting model, go back to precinct voting and not sending mail-in ballots to every household. So ours will be one of the few counties that is not going to continue those practices of more open access that were begun during COVID. So we're one of the rare places, along with some other states, that are starting to look at voting restrictions. And so I wanted to ask my colleagues if you would support looking at a resolution from the city of Morro Bay to just clearly state that we would like to have a free, fair, and franchised elections, allowing all citizens to vote and have maximum access to voting.
I support that, council member.
Yes, I'm with you as well.
Yeah, thank you too.
That was a tough one. How many more do you have?
What else you got?
I know.
What else you got?
That's it tonight. That's it tonight.
All right.
You're on a roll. You might as well keep going, Don.
Any other future agenda items for consideration that,
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
yes, Councilmember Davis, sir.
Yes, I've been approached by a group of local people who want to volunteer to produce a series of music concerts in Cloisters Park. The concerts are designed for Morro Bay residents and families. They'll be evening affairs featuring jazz, Latin, and soft pop music under the stars. The group has contacts and expertise, and I would like to see if council's interested in pursuing the proposal with city sponsorship. I've talked to Scott about it, and he thinks he can bring back a staff report in August if council supports the idea.
Are we thinking of Metallica and the Grateful Dead, or? Okay, boy, I think if anybody's ready for a concert, I am after this pandemic. But I'm raising my hand of support for that. And I know I was going to ask Mr. Collins about that, but if you've talked to him, and Scott, if you're comfortable with that, from a resource standpoint, man, it would be nice to support something like that in our community.
Yeah, and to be clear, in that conversation with Councilmember Davison, it sounds like a great idea. I need to spend some time evaluating what that would cost and the permitting stuff and all, if we can help staff it or not. So that's what you would see, sort of just a realistic view of what it would take to make it work. And Councilmember Davis is so kind to connect me with the interested parties, so I can start talking with them about what they're really seeking to do and what they're capable of doing. So your report would look like that, something along those lines.
Fantastic. Yeah. It looks like I saw a bunch of heads nodding. Yes, okay, looks like it. Good. Thank you, Councilmember Davis. We need it, I must say. Well, I don't want to vote on it yet. I'm sorry. It's premature, but it would be nice. Councilmember Heller, I see your hand up, sir.
Yes, it was mentioned earlier with some public comment regarding legislation in Sacramento. B9, I believe, SB9 was the legislation that was mentioned. I know there are other items up there pending relative to zoning issues with respect to single-family dwellings and so forth. Is that something that we should be perhaps talking about in August at one of our meetings in more detail?
I was thinking about that, and I'm thinking for a number of them it may well be too late, but under the purview of the policy that we have, authorizing the mayor to support initiatives consistent with policies from the League of Cities, I was hoping to address it via that mechanism, but if there would be leftover items that might linger after that, perhaps we could invite Dave Mullinex from the League of Cities, our local rep, to come and make a presentation at our council meeting in September.
That would be great. Yeah, I think that would be super.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody feels the same way. Is that other council members just looking? Is that an okay approach? Okay, good. All right. Does that satisfy the issue, Councilmember Heller? Just want to make sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. Thank you to Mrs. Truesdale also for, I think we all got her letter on many of those issues that you just articulated, and I appreciate her input, and we'll be following through with regard to positions on the league with regard to those issues. So, all right, well, listen, any other, I see no other hands. Great, okay. Well, let me wish you all a good break. You deserved it. We've done a lot of heavy lifting, hard work, and I hope that you and at least our staff will be taking some time off during July to enjoy family, friends, and this lovely community that we're able to live in. And so with that, I will go ahead and adjourn. The next regular meeting of the Morro Bay City Council will be held on Tuesday, August the 10th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. via teleconference. Thank you and have a great evening. Be safe and be well.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.